Hello? 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 If you can hear this, it's not too late. I've returned to warn you. This is Time Pop, a podcast that discusses time travel and pop culture. There are spoilers. I've seen the future, and nothing is sacred to these folks. Your past, present, and future are sure to be ruined. Even if you could go back in time, as I have, you will never forget what you are about to hear. You've been warned. This is Time Pop.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Welcome, Chrononauts, as we guide you through the experience of time travel using pop culture as our subatomic agitation of carbon quarks tuned to the mesons of your optic anotic anotic neurons.
Yes, you went back and you remember you looked at it?
Oh, I watched it like over and over and over again because I couldn't even get closed caption to work on my TV. So I had to watch that scene 10 times.
I heard that part and there was a moment where I was like, do I go back and try to listen to that over and over again to get it? And then I was like, nah.
Well, for your listening pleasure then, Ari, subatomic agitation of carbon quarks tuned to the mesons of your optic anotic neurons.
Yes, that is some science mumbo jumbo if I've ever heard it.
We will be your constants. I am Dez.
And I'm Ari.
And this is
helping you out. Time Pop.
Time Pop.
Oh, that one was not so great.
Scott, what is it?
Time Pop!
Yeah. So I'm going to start off.
Oh.
I'm going to start off by saying fuck you for trying to get out of Quantum Leap.
Who are you talking to? Me or Scott?
Scott.
No, okay. Wait. Let's refresh this. First of all, this one is a big transformation for me. I requested with you guys when Time Pop first started. I said, when you do these films, I need to be a part of this one. And for me, Quantum Leap pilot, huge. Besides Back to the Future, for growing up in the 80s, that was like it for time travel. Maybe one of the best premises for a TV show. Been so excited about this, and Ari and I watched it, and it was just like watching a balloon sink from my head to my feet and then pop
so
under
wait,
it.
Scott, you said while we were watching it, you said you're not sure if you had seen this one before, the pilot.
Yeah, I watched the show regularly. I think I might have never seen the pilot. I think I watched the TV show regularly, but maybe I never saw that first episode. Usually the intro pretty much explains it, and it doesn't really matter which episode you watch. Usually they don't have that much to do with each other. Yeah, I texted Desmond that night. I forgot how else it came into it, but I'm like, are you sure we want to go on with this? There was just so little science in there. And he was just like...
Here's Scott's text. Okay, you watched the pilot yet? Should we reconsider? It's rough.
And of course, Desmond loved it.
Yeah.
We sat there watching it, just waiting. It's the first episode, so you would just think they're so much of an origin story and explaining the science and what's going on. And as Desmond put in the text, it's just a period piece with like a sprinkle of like flakes of plot and science on top of it and time travel.
Well, and I'm pretty sure I've seen this episode, but it was probably just on randomly. Like, this was one of the shows I would watch. For a while, it was on at 9 o'clock. And so I would go to bed at 9, watch this, and then fall asleep. And I did that for years and years. And so whatever episode was on, I just watched. And I mean, it's obviously kind of a pilot, but at the time I didn't know what a pilot was. So I just thought it was kind of an overly interesting episode, I think. And I probably didn't see it all at once. I probably just saw the Air Force one, or maybe never seen the baseball one, because you couldn't make the baseball one its own episode. It wasn't long enough.
Right. It was just enough to show you that this will happen many times. Oh, man. I had to go and watch a later episode. I had to watch an intro, just the intro part to a later episode, just to feel better about things.
So, Ari, what is your experience with Quantum Leap?
I don't think I have ever even heard of it until Scott mentioned that he wanted to watch it for this podcast.
So not until Time Pop did you even know what a quantum leap was.
I probably have heard the name, but yeah, I had no idea what it was. I knew nothing about Quantum Leap.
Are you ever going to watch another episode?
So I looked up while we were in the middle of the episode and I was getting bored. I looked up the top 10 episodes of Quantum Leap, and I might go back and watch those, but it looks like every single episode is just a period piece. He goes there, he solves a problem, and then he goes somewhere else. And so it really isn't like that much time travel at all. So maybe I'll go watch, one of the number 1 episode, number 2 episode, but I'm not really that interested.
So in my research, because I loved this episode, but there's still plenty of downtime for Googling. So this show starts, it airs in 1989. And from what I could come up with, they are basing this story on the far, far future of 1995.
Right.
Yeah.
So in 6 years, but I guess I forget.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So in 6 years, the world has become a disco ball of flashing lights of futuristic advancements. And then as far as this show goes is 1999. I think basically in real time from 95 when Sam Beckett starts traveling through time, and then in real time 4 years pass. And so I think at some point he comes back to what would be now, which then was 1999. And I don't think this show ever enters the 2000s. But it does at some point,
Right.
somehow, even though this is, he's supposed to only be able to travel. Sorry, I know I'm jumping way ahead, but it's Quantum Leap, people. Catch up. He's only supposed to be able to travel within his lifetime, but I saw on one of the timelines that he makes it back to 1862 at some point. So I don't know how he does that.
There's got to be some excuse, but yeah, I think that's generally the premise that he go within his own lifetime. He said in this episode he was born in 54, I think.
Yes,
which is right. He'd be 35. That's like their perfect wise man TV show age. And in the 80s, I was explaining this to Ari. 80s had a big hard on for the 50s and 60s at the time. So this show just really fed into that need. Now, if it was one now, it'll be all in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I don't know how many. I think there's like 90 episodes, and I'm pretty sure 80 of them take place in the 50s.
Yeah.
What got me super excited was, I don't care what anyone says, Major League 3, Back to the Minors is the greatest Major League movie, and Scott Bakula is amazing in it. And seeing him back on the baseball diamond with the Bombers made me very happy.
Wow. You got to take your cheap thrills, you can get them.
Oh, and how, what shocked me the most about this? I mean, it shouldn't have based on the time, but they really dug their heels in on the chauvinism.
Yes. Oh my God. It was shocking. It was just it was over the top. It was like the first episode of Mad Men.
Yeah, a couple times they mention it, and it's like, all right, so, Al's kind of a womanizer or whatever, but then just kind of keep really digging their heels in on that aspect of it. It's like, wow. And I know the show, I think in general, I don't think the show is that bad. I mean, I think he comes back as a woman a couple of times and does some good things for the female side, but any chance they got to make a chick joke, they really went for it.
You've got this great concept of a show about time travel in your life, and your opening shot, the beginning of this, the way you want to set the tone is Al driving down the street and like oogling over some female with blinky earrings that has nothing to do with the plot or any of it. It's useless info. It just shows that he's a womanizer. Then he realizes that something's going on at the lab. Totally unnecessary.
There's so many better ways to show that the future. Like they were trying to show like, ooh, look at the future. The style is weird with flashing earrings and the car. There's so many better ways to show what the future is going to look like.
Yeah. That was like, 1995, boy. What a blast from the past.
Oh. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get through this episode a little bit, and then we'll come back and we'll talk some time travel stuff. Ari, Tell us
Yeah.
about this fascinatingly intricate,
Complex.
weird story of Sam Beckett's first time travel experience.
So it's 1995 or 6. What did you say?
95.
95. And a scientist named Sam, I guess, has invented him and Al and something named Ziggy, which we learn what that is later. They have invented a way to. Were they trying to make time travel, or were they trying to do something else?
Now that we're here, I don't remember if that was the intended.
I think they were trying to do time travel.
They were, because he explained with the whole string scene. Okay, so
That's right.
This scientist Sam decided it would be a good idea to turn the machine on and get in it when his co-partner scientist guy wasn't even there, right? So Al was on his way to work, and Sam decided, hey, I'm gonna just turn this on and get in and see what happens by myself. So he does, and he's standing in a very form-fitting white unitard, and a bunch of like light wind is coming up around him, and all of a sudden he's transported into the mind of a guy named Tom in 1956 in Arizona on an Air Force base, and he has no memory of what happened, who he is. He knows that something is wrong. He knows that his name is not Tom, which his very pregnant wife calls him when they wake up that morning. And he's very confused and looks in the mirror and knows that the reflection that he sees is not his own. So he's not supposed to be here. There, he doesn't know why, because he has memory loss. So then proceeds most of the show of him trying to navigate being this other person who is a test pilot for a very fast plane called an X2, and they are going Mach 3, which is the speed of sound, faster than the speed of sound. And let's see, important parts that you need to know are there is a co-pilot guy who apparently is a big prankster with this guy named Tom, and they've been doing a bunch of like practical jokes on all the scientists and all the command people, and they've been saying that traveling at the speed, Mach 2, Mach 3 messes with your mind and your memory and things like that. So the fact that Tom or Sam isn't remembering things, I guess they chalk it up to traveling at Mach whatever. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's how there's some theories going on that this is messing with their memory, and so it works out very conveniently for Sam that he can just be like, oh, it must be this.
But also that they do practical jokes.
Yeah, that was a gag, I think they were trying to do.
Yeah, so like the scientists weren't sure if that really was a thing or if they're just pulling a joke, a prank. Sam or Tom realizes that he's going to have to fly this plane and he doesn't know how to fly. And shortly after he discovers that, a man appears, and it's the guy Al from the opening scene with the futuristic chick. And he doesn't recognize him at first. Sam doesn't recognize him at first, and then he sees him again. And then he starts talking to him, but no one else can see this guy named Al. Only he can, and no one else can hear him. And Sam soon learns that Al is his coworker, and that Sam himself, Sam, that's very confusing, was part of an experiment that went wrong. And Al is a holographic projection that he is doing from their lab back in time to where Sam is, but no one else can see him except for Sam.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
And Desmond, why is it that works? That he can send a holographic image back to one person?
Subatomic agitation of carbon quarks tuned to the mesons of Scott Bakula's optic anodic and anodic neurons.
Yo, that's how it works. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Duh. So basically, I just got to get into some of the science here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So basically they've discovered, okay, so and wait, another thing. So Al then, when he gives that long mumbo jumbo of an explanation, he then takes out a piece of string from his pocket and he ties one end together. He says, this end is when you are born and this end is when you are dead. And he ties it together to make a loop. This is your life. And then he takes that loop and he scrumbles it up into a ball. And he says, do you see how the different points of your timeline are now intersecting? That's what we tried to do. We want to be able to jump within your lifetime, but something went wrong and now you're jumping into someone else's life, and in order for you to get back, you have to fix something. You have to right a wrong, or you have to correct something in the timeline. I forget the term that he used. So what is happening? They have invented a machine that takes your consciousness and puts it into someone else's consciousness in the past, but then whoever's consciousness you took over, they take that and bring it into the present, the 95, 96 present, and their consciousness is now taking over your consciousness while you're in their body in the past.
So is Tom in Sam's body in the future?
Yes.
That's what we're to assume. I think they refer to it like the waiting room or something. But
yeah. Okay. I didn't even think about the fact that he was in Sam's body, because I never realized that watching the show, that the person whose body he's taking over is in the waiting room in the future. But yeah, of course it makes sense that now that person is in Sam's body. But that person is all confused too, because every time that person does it, it's their first time. And so they don't really have the chance to figure it out. So I think they're just kind of in a weird limbo waiting room state.
Yeah, he
confused.
said something like, Tom is in your body and he has no memory and is just as confused as you were when you first got there. But Sam, in Tom's body, slowly starts to get his memory back. He starts to remember, like his father's name, and like tries to call him a couple times, but or talks to his father, I guess, which I think they're setting up for like future stories. He starts to remember things, and then he realizes, okay, I'm gonna have to fly this plane. He figures, so another thing is they're also able to know information about the person that they have taken over. So Al knows that Tom died in this plane crash flying the X2. And so they assume, okay, I gotta fly this plane and not die. That's what I got to do to correct this, and then I get to go home. So he does that. He flies the plane. He doesn't die, but nothing happens. He's still there. So then his pregnant wife, with the stress of her husband about to fly the plane, goes into labor prematurely. And fortunately, Sam, I'm already getting confused. Sam from 95 is a doctor. He's a scientist and a doctor. Actually, he has 6 different doctorates.
By 35.
One of them being a medical doctor. And so when he's there with Tom's wife, who is about to go into labor prematurely, all the doctors are like, the baby's not going to make it. And Tom Sam says,
Scott Bakula
says, you just got to give her this. And he says some medicine that has not been invented yet. And everybody looks at him weird. Oh yeah, and before that, to test if the pilot's memory is in fact affected when flying at Mach 2 or 3, they have the pilots fill out this long questionnaire about their past and about things only they would know. And of course, Scott Dracula doesn't know anything about Tom's life. So he puts in information about his own life because he has his memory back now. And he puts in that he was born in 54 and, that mini skirts were the thing that affected him most in high school, and a bunch of other sexist stuff.
Pantyhose.
Yeah, pantyhose. So he's in the hospital. He tells the doctors, do this, that, and the other to save her and the baby, which required to get her drunk. Is this a thing?
Well, I think it's the best alternative to what the real drug would have been in the 70s. Because I think, they by the 70s, they have found a safer way to do it. But in the 50s, they just pump her full of vodka.
They just get her a little drunk and she stops going into labor. So they do that and she's saved, the baby is saved. And then all of a sudden, he goes flashing white lights and he wakes up and he's on a baseball field. So that was what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to save the wife and the baby. And then he traveled, but he did not travel back to his own body or time.
The next leap was not the leap home.
Right. And so generally, yeah, I mean, that Al has, Ziggy is their computer who tries to figure out the probability of what he's supposed to do, and they're not always
That's
correct.
right.
Yeah.
It's then revealed that Ziggy is a computer program.
Yeah, artificial intelligence, I think.
That Sam also invented.
Right.
And so this trip to the baseball field is basically just a holding point for him. So now that he didn't leap home, like Al was kind of withholding some information, thinking, well, Sam is just going to be home after this and we'll figure it out. But now they've, figured out after 2 jumps that he may never leap home. And so Al comes forth with Sam's real name, and so then he can figure out who his father is. And so then while he's in the bottom of the 9th of this baseball game, he goes into the dugout and calls his father.
Oh, that's when he calls his dad.
Yeah, he calls him once in the other. He tries to call him in the other one, but can't quite figure it out because he doesn't have all the information. And then so now he does, and so he calls his dad. What does he say? He's a cousin or an uncle, or I don't know what. I can't remember what cockamamie story he says, but he's somehow a distant relative of his father's. And then during this conversation, we actually see young Sam also in the background of this phone conversation. And so that's what most of this is. And then he comes out. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping on this, Ari. So then after the phone call, then he goes out on the baseball field, hits the most unlikely of in the park home runs. And
was it a home run? It wasn't a home run. They just kept overthrowing the ball.
Right, it's an in the park home run,
like a bunch of amateurs.
So what did he had to just not swing? That was his destiny for there.
Well, no. Well, the thing is, in baseball, if the catcher drops the 3rd strike, you have a chance to run to first. And in the panic, he overthrows first. And then,
so he was supposed to not swing, Scott.
Well, I mean, in theory, he would have hit a home run, but Sam Beckett is not a professional baseball player, so he just gets lucky and comes home. And so then the Bombers win the big game, and then he leaps again. And we missed the titular. They still haven't figured this series out yet. We don't get our end of the episode. Oh boy.
Right.
After this, Ari, every single episode ends with him leaping into a new body, confused, and saying, oh boy.
Well, usually they look into him. He looks in the mirror and you see, like, what is he this time? He's a politician. He's Abraham Lincoln. He's a slave. He's a woman. He's whatever. A child.
And I don't think the internal dialogue continues in this show either. Like, he had a lot of internal dialogue. I don't think that's a thing throughout.
I don't remember. I think it suggests that it is on like Wikipedia, but yeah, I don't remember. I mean, what's really distracting, unfortunately, is the soundtrack, right? This like hokey keyboard, like easy listening, middle-aged light jazz soundtrack.
I loved it because that did stay. That was the score of that show, and that just made me feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
So one thing that I did like about this show was the concept of consciousness traveling and not your body traveling. So there's a couple other shows and movies that have done this, and I kind of like that concept. Hot Tub Time Machine that we just talked about does that. A TV show called Travelers does that. And I think it's an interesting concept. I like it.
It's smarter, right? It's like almost you won't get into this situation, all the time travel movies and shows. If you meet your former self, time will go haywire. And this is like a way that if time travel is possible, it would prevent that.
Well, not really. I mean, he could. I mean, I guess if it's his consciousness, but in theory, he could run into his younger self.
Sure, but he wouldn't be him. He's still someone else.
Yeah, in Quantum Leap, yes, you can run into yourself.
But it's okay. Although two consciousness, you're right, that gets interesting. I mean, we're talking about matter, right? The same exact matter occupying the same time and place, which is questionable. And this is not, but it's still two of the same consciousness. But
so the laws of this the laws of this TV show are that your consciousness travels, and if you do encounter yourself, it's not a big deal, because doesn't he encounter himself? I know he becomes
No,
his
he
younger
he
self.
leaps into himself. I know that.
Yeah.
I don't remember if he ever encountered himself or not.
Which that episode right there, I would definitely want to watch, where he becomes his younger self, because does he lose his memory every time he jumps, or was it just the first jump?
I think it's just the first one. I think he tends to not lose it each time. Because at the
So,
beginning of each episode, Al pops in. He's like, "What's going on, Al?" And he's like, "Oh, well, Ziggy thinks you're in the body of blah, blah, blah. He's a politician and he thinks you're supposed to get elected."
but he remembers who he is and what is going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's generally
Yeah.
maybe it's slightly foggy, but he always remembers himself and Al and all that.
So have you both seen the episode where he jumps into his younger self?
I'm sure I have, but
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
sure I have.
remember it.
Same.
That would be an interesting episode to watch, because that would bring up the question of his older consciousness replaces his younger consciousness, but when the older consciousness leaves, does his younger consciousness remember all the things that he knew and did, and then he grows up to become current Sam?
Oh, bootstrap.
Yeah.
There's got to be a solution for like when this. Let's say he's leapt through 200 people in this experience. You can't have 200 people going around that know that they've been displaced by time travel, and then that would affect the time stream. They must erase their memory, or there's got to be something responsible you do than just allow someone to come 40 years in the future, hang out for a little bit, and just send them back. And then they've missed, although I already brought this point up, what also happens if they've missed, say, like a week of their life?
Yeah.
It's questionable.
Yeah, because when they leap back, they would, in theory, be stuck in the same situation that Sam is. Like, oh boy.
Yeah, what's happened for the past week?
So, did you watch the palate cleanser with Scott, Ari?
Oh, I needed to see. It was almost like I think I did not ever see the pilot, but obviously I understood the show. So I remember the intro kind of breaking it down better for you. So I went to the next episode to watch the intro, and that was kind of a recap of the pilot. So then we went like 3 seasons down, and I saw the intro, and there it was. It had like the female voiceover of like breaking it all down, the theme song showing all the scenes, and then I felt a little bit better.
The amazing graphics.
And then I got to see the, like you said, the whole flashing white thing, which I needed to see of like when he left.
Yeah.
So they polished it up a little bit after the pilot episode, it looks like.
Yeah. Sometimes you think that pilot is like the opening one, it's like a film, it's better, but it's like they don't have the budget. They're just doing one to try to like sell to the networks. And I guess sometimes it can be less than. This pilot was filmed with so much stock footage. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
Of pilots.
But it really was like, as not as informative as it could have been for us science nerds. It was a really good pilot as far as what the show was to become. I mean, that was, if they had gone really science heavy on the first episode, then, the rest of it where he's just leaping into bodies and fixing problems would have seemed really.
There is something fun, I don't know if fun is the right word, but interesting to watch somebody try to navigate that situation where they're just dropped in someone's life and they have to figure it out. It's almost like a mystery. There is definitely something interesting about that.
Now, here's the real thing. So he changes 90 things.
Right.
Every episode he changed. I think a lot of times he saves someone's life. I think that's
sometimes.
Definitely not all the time, but I think if not the person whose body he's leapt into life he's saving, it's someone adjacent to that person that he's saving. And the ripple effects of that are astronomical.
Well, yeah. You start running into some very big problems with this. It's suggesting he's righting what once went wrong. I think all three of us would be like, time is time. And what was supposed to happen happened. So it's weird to suggest somehow time has its own being, or someone created time and this is how it was supposed to go, and it didn't go that way. So they're using this man as his vessel of correction. They even suggested in the show at one point, he's like, you did the experiment, but I don't know if it's like God or time itself is guiding you to do this.
Didn't they mention something that it's like the computer program? Or am I making that up?
Well, that's who figures out what right he needs to wrong.
Okay.
Well, they're just trying to figure out what they think the probability is. There is a force at play. This was not the experiment they designed that is setting him back there. They say that in this, but they almost suggest it could be God or I think just like time itself, like Mother Nature, like time. But he was just supposed to leap back to like himself, not to all these things where the only way out is by correcting what once went wrong. And then Ziggy is just trying to come up with the best probability of what they think that is.
So, Desmond, did you see all of this, every episode of this show?
I saw close to every episode. It just in that time, it was hard to, I definitely wasn't watching it during its, I was definitely watching reruns. So I wasn't watching it from A to Z.
And have you seen Travelers?
I haven't.
Okay, I think you would really like it.
Yeah.
It's good. It's really good. It's kind of a similar concept, consciousness that travels back and a big computer that manages it all.
Is that the one? Does that start with the Hindenburg?
No.
Is that okay? What did I?
Oh
watch?
wait, it did start with a major event, didn't it? But not the Hindenburg, right? Because it's in the night. Oh, you're talking about Timeless, right? Not
Yes.
Timeless. Yeah, the show where like the historian goes back. Yes, and they're going through history, like major things in history, and there's like a secret society that's trying to alternate to.
I definitely haven't seen all of that show either, but
Which show is that?
I told you guys about this one. It's not great, but it's worth it just for the time travel geek in us. Yeah, it's called Timeless. The government, they're chasing down someone who's going to history, and major events in history they're trying to change because it's gonna help them take over the world. And then but of course you find out that like she's not, after a while they're a historian and like a technical guy and they're trying to stop the bad guy, but then they start questioning, is the bad guy bad or is maybe the agency that's sending me down to stop him bad? And
yeah, which is a similar theme in a lot of things.
Yep. So yeah, but yeah, Desmond, what you're saying is right. If he changes all these things, the way the ripples it has is huge, but they're trying to suggest that this is unique to this than any other time travel thing you guys have seen or done. You're correcting time by doing that.
Yeah.
But time was wrong. What a weird concept. That time was supposed to go away and all these things didn't, and you're fixing it.
So this one really sets up the argument I'm always trying to make where there is a first time. There's a first time where he dies, his child dies, and 50 years pass, and then he goes back and corrects it. And that's a lot. Like in a movie where you correct one or two things, you can see that not throwing off the whole universal timeline. But when he's going back and quote unquote correcting so many different things, the ripple effects of all those is just crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder in any episode, do they ever show the cause of it? Never? Okay.
Of what? Of the fact of what he's doing?
Yeah, do they ever show the effect of the change he's made?
I've got to admit, so I don't want to watch the whole series or anything, I think, but I would like to do what Ari said. I want to watch the good episodes and I want to watch the last episode. I do not remember how this ends. I'm sure it's a super cheesy. He ends up back, he hugs a wife or family or Al or something, but I'm curious. But yeah, even if let's say we're going with this idea, they're saying time was done incorrectly, which again, that goes against my theory of like, if this is God or time itself and it was supposed to go a certain way, why did it not? But let's say he did and he goes back and corrects it. There's still all the ripples of everything that he encounters while he's back before he's correcting it. He's doing so many things differently, interacting with different people. All the ripples from those are also huge. And from the consciousness he replaced that goes to the future, unless they erase that person's memory, they come back and they don't know things for a week. That would make you go crazy. That is a lot of implications to that.
And even like, I mean, since we're talking about, crazy sci-fi stuff, I mean, if they could import Sam's memories into that person before they leap back.
Right. That would only make sense. But still, Sam did things that like he didn't understand. It wouldn't they'd be remembering Sam, not remembering who he is. It would be weird. There's no way around that being normal. And it's not ethically responsible to steal someone's life for a week and just send them back. And if they you haven't erased their memory, they've just seen the future and they know that there's time travel, and now they're supposed to go back and be an insurance salesman in 1955.
Yeah, this show destroys the universe. I think that's the only logical outcome, to change so many things. And
so it has to be one timeline, right? It's not alternate universes, alternate timelines.
That's what they're suggesting. He's fixing the timeline.
Yeah.
But with the blessing of time itself, potentially. I don't know. Yeah, and it's hokey. I suggested this because I remember it as like this is one that had like good basis of science of like quantum theory and like string theory,
Ha!
and that was my memory of this. And like now to look at it through such the critical eyes that you guys do and that I do, it's hard. It obviously was not as well thought out as one
I'm
might have hoped.
sure this came out in like the late 80s, early 90s, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure back then this was a big deal. This was probably a very original and kind of cool. And
Yeah. Back to the Future, was the only other thing kind of doing this at the time. And first people to use the term quantum, the most abused word in the films we were discussing. Everything's everyone's like, what the fuck is quantum?
Well, and I think this show existed more out of nostalgia than time travel because
Yeah,
I think
totally.
it was 40-year-olds that just wanted to hang out in the 50s for an hour that sold this show more than the science.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a 30-year thing, right? That's why I said now people are obsessed with 80s and 90s. Back then, 50s and 60s, and you get to see everyone dressed up in their little 50s dues, and the same thing. Back to the Future. Peggy Sue got married. We were
As far as special effects go, the mirror effects were really good. There's
But
for the
a
time. Oh, yeah.
go ahead.
You go, Ari.
Well, did you catch that they were not quite synced up?
A little bit.
Did you catch that there was another person through a piece of glass and they were trying to mirror each other?
Yeah, I knew
Oh.
that's what they were trying to do, but they did it pretty well.
They do it every episode.
Yeah, because the mirror, what shocked me the most was how good the mirror looked. The movements weren't quite synced up, but it didn't scream.
Yeah.
Jump way back a little bit. As far as historians traveling through time, there's a really cool book series called The Chronicles of St. Mary's. That's really cool. Kelly, I think, has listened to all of them. I just keep not getting back to it. Like, I think I've listened to all of the first book called Just One Damned Thing After Another. But if you're interested in that kind of, and it's one of those things where the intent is pure just to go look, but of course things go wrong and they end up getting involved and they have to correct some stuff. But as far as traveling through time for pure historical value, the Chronicles of St. Mary's is pretty cool. Thank you for listening to Time Pop, brought to you by Sounds Awesome. Please like and subscribe and tell a neighbor or friend about it so you can share a discussion of your own on the topic of this movie. Please check us out on social media. We are at What Sounds Awesome on Facebook and Instagram, and at Sounds Awesome 2 on Twitter. You can email us directly with questions and comments at wesoundawesome@gmail.com. We would love to read your thoughts aloud on air, and definitely let us know about a movie you would like featured on a future episode. We have 3 great movie podcasts. Rotten Popcorn, where Scott and Dez discuss films with vast differences between fans and critics based on Rotten Tomatoes aggregation. And Apocalypse Now, where Scott, Callum, and Dez talk about apocalypse-ish movies about society going through a difficult situation, not unlike the one we are currently living through. Want to check out some non-movie related podcasts? Check out All the Answers. You have questions? The Record Keepers have answers. Cassidy and Katie have sassy comments. Who are the Record Keepers? You'll have to listen to find out. And our newest addition to the Sounds Awesome family, Truth Not Trends. Liam Bauer and Jesse Schmidt have a combined 35 years of strength training, and they are here to keep you strong, fit, and motivated through these difficult times. Please visit our website at whatsoundsawesome.com to find all these fine podcasts, or just search Sounds Awesome in your podcaster of choice to find these fine shows. Please rate and review. And now, back to the exciting conclusion of this episode. All right, let's get to the big question.
So many questions.
Do you do this?
No.
Come on!
It is not perfected. If you jump back, you are going to be bouncing around for, what was it, 9 seasons? No way.
Yeah.
That would... I mean, yeah, the fact that you may never leap home certainly leaves a big hole in it. But this would be interesting.
I
Would
mean,
you use it? You would want to be teleported into different other people's bodies for years upon years?
Again, I don't like the idea that I don't have my own exit strategy. But to go into bodies to to correct what was once wrong, to put right what was once wrong.
Who says that it's wrong?
God.
Oh
Ziggy
boy.
or God or time or Ziggy or that'd be yeah. I mean, Des, think about this. What if this was like your retirement? And some people get an RV and drive around the country. You're like, okay, I'm retired now. I'm just gonna go travel around time, going to different people's bodies and write what went wrong.
That would be so much fun. Because every week is like an adventure. You get to be Indiana Jones every week for a different, a different person and a different thing. Like, I don't know, there's something exciting about uh Jesus, I don't have the words today. When you're just in that survival mode and you just have one thing. Like, this is like almost like an apocalypse now thing where it's kind of a survival thing and you just have one major thing that you have to accomplish and you have the help of your hologram and all that technology
I
and
think you're looking at it in a more positive light because in the show, it always works out. But in reality, if this were a real thing, you could get transported into, slavery and, it would be very, very unpleasant.
which
Or
happens to Sam,
it does
which
happen to Sam.
he
It happens
ends
to
up
Sam
he ends up
in the
doing just
South.
that during the civil rights era. And now what we never see in the show is if your chance to correct it flies by, do you, let's say it's not, you're not saving the person's life that you're stepped into, but you have to save someone else's life and you're unable to correct that mistake. Do you then ride out that life, or are they just like,
Yeah.
swing and a miss? Let's
That
leap.
no, I
Yeah,
think that's
potentially.
the suggestion is I think you stay in that person's body, right? They never explored it because he always does it because it's the 80s TV.
Now, I would think that the logical outcome of this show is you go back and you do it again.
Right. You're totally right. Why would that not be an option?
Yeah.
Why
Wait,
would
what
that
do
not?
you
That would
what
be
do you
more
mean?
interesting because it's time travel. Say he fails. Say Desmond goes back. He doesn't fly Mach 2. He dies. You just leap out and you go back and time travel back and do it again until you get it right, until you fix it.
Who's to say that your consciousness survives and automatically goes back to your body if you
Let's
fail?
say you don't even die. Let's just say he fails. Some of these, it's just like, hey, you've got to get elected, or you've got to pass a test, or you've got to swing the home run. Let's say he doesn't do that. Why not? If time or God or whoever is trying to make him do this, why not just send him back again until he gets it right?
Yeah. Like
Because I
that
think
would be
the risk of it is if you don't do it, then that's the sense that I got. If
Yeah,
you
no, you're
fail
right.
at this,
No, you're totally right, Ari. I'm just
well,
saying,
that's their
why
fear.
would if something why would that not be the case? What Desmond's suggesting, if time wants him to do this, why not keep sending him back? But yes, you're right. The
Why
premise is that he's stuck.
I think that's to add a ticking clock to the show.
Of course.
But I think if we're going to explore the science of this,
Liz.
I think that yeah, I think he just ends up in a loop until he fixes it, or maybe it just that right doesn't get wrong, because there's no reason why Sam's consciousness should be destroyed by the failure of this time travel experience.
Desmond, do you know in any of the episodes, do they ever do a storyline that was real, that
Oh
really
yeah,
happened,
I think so. I think he goes into like famous historical figures at some point.
and
Like
like saves them or whatever?
maybe he could be Kennedy or something like that. I don't think one that big happens, but I think something like that. Like you're Kennedy and you have to be, not be
Yeah,
shot.
he's at least people that are
Or
real
it might be
people.
something. There might be. I think there are episodes that get really interesting where like he's supposed to be the guy that shot Kennedy and he has to make sure it happens. Or questionable thing. They get a little more creative as this gets into it.
Yeah.
But he's conflicted about having to shoot the president. It's so traumatic. I'm not saying this one happened, but there was something like that.
And this is one of those things too where obviously having a family and people I love makes this a less tolerable thing to try.
Right.
But if I'm just a dude, a scientist, and I've spent my whole life trying to build this machine, like, yeah, I get in.
So, I mean, I'm with Ari on this one. It's great that you're looking at it so positively, but also think about the stress in all these situations. You end up a doctor having to do a surgery. You're a baseball player, a pilot. You don't know how to do these things.
You
you
got
land with
got
someone. You got to do open heart surgery. You are not trained for this.
I got 6 doctorates and Al and Ziggy on my team.
Or you're not a mountain climber. You're climbing like Mount Everest. You know, it's the stress that you got to deal with. You're by yourself. You got to cover it up for everybody. You don't know anything, and you got to perform this impossible task. Stressful.
If this is a wrong that's needs righting, I'm the man for the job.
All right, enjoy your retirement in the time stream.
I will.
That's great.
I will. Yeah, and they did talk about that's right, because they do. I mean, Sam is still aging at a regular rate, because at some point I think Al's just like, or you just do this until you die. And I'm of the mind that if you can figure out how to make this machine work wrong, you can figure out how to make this machine work right.
So
just needs a little time.
I looked in Wikipedia while we were talking. There's stuff in the plot that I don't know if it came across to you guys. It did not come across to me. It's suggesting that the government was about to pull support for his Quantum Leap project. So he ran in there, the project accelerator, to go back in time before anyone could stop him. So that's like the reason why he jumped in there when it wasn't ready.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
When did they say any of that?
They did. That's what, again, I pushed this episode because I think I was figuring, I knew the intro and the basic principle. They must explain everything. It must really get into the science behind it. There's one part of value. It's just the part with the string. Nothing else barely covers. It's just dumb voiceovers and him playing practical jokes on women.
And that's probably something that comes up in a later.
Yeah, that was in Wikipedia.
A later episode. There's a really interesting, when we were doing this episode, I was curious what other podcasts are talking about Quantum Leap, and there's a couple of them out there. But one of them is, I wish I could quote what podcast this was, but they're going through the series in chronological order.
Oh, by like year?
Yeah, by wherever the farthest back he went, and then they're working their way up, which I think is a very interesting way to watch this show. It probably, whatever science they do dig up, I'm sure gets even more confusing not watching that in order. But I think that's a really interesting way to watch this show.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And really, what in the storyline, why are you making Al like a womanizer? And like they push it so hard, and every time you see him, he's talking about how hungover he is. This guy that is dealing with like time travel and this quantum experiment his friends got, and I remember this, he's just always hungover. He always partied the night before.
Because he's probably supposed to be the comic relief.
Yes, he's supposed to be the comic relief. No, I get that.
And it also makes it adds where he's not always available. He's not just always sitting there sober waiting for Sam to chime in and get his attention. He's out at Laker games and hanging out with Mandy.
We watched like a random later episode for the intro, and in that random episode it showed that in that one Al had gone back in time and that Sam was actually the hologram giving him advice. This one ran somehow that switched for an episode. So that's exciting.
I think I'm going to start throwing this on. I've been watching shows, just kind of in the background while I'm doing other stuff. And I think this might be a good one because there's no way I can like sit down and watch this show like really closely every episode. But I think just kind of following it piece by piece while it's on in the background, I think this show has made that cut in my life. Oh, did we solve it?
Sure.
What did you solve? The meaning of life and time travel?
Just the episode.
I don't know. Yeah, this was. I think there's some interesting things in here, and obviously it being a 90 episode series, there's only so much we can garner from the pilot, and we tried, and I think this show, just being the period piece fun romp that it was supposed to be, just leaves a million questions to answer, not being a tight movie with a beginning, a middle, and an end. It just, there's nothing but questions, and we have very few answers.
Yeah, this was a big learning one for me, right, of what holds up and what does not hold up. I was so excited about this. I have to rethink my life, I think. I think I have to rethink everything I think about the universe. I held it in such high regard.
It's a great show. It's just not.
It's a great premise.
Scientifically tight show.
Yeah. Okay, I can live with that.
And while we're living with that, thank you so much for listening. I am Desmond McNeese.
And RELG.
And Scott Lifton.
I'm trying something new.
I liked it.
Bye.
All right, I'm sorry, guys. We're going to do a quick run pee, folks.
This portion of Time Pop has been brought to you by urine. Urine, partially made of urea.
And the funny thing is he's not going to edit this part out.
Oh. We could say whatever we want about him right now.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to force him to edit this out. What you don't know about Desmond McNeese is he is also a secret agent for the government, the KGB, for the CIA, and Mars.
And the Russians.
The Russians,
That is
KGB. Yeah. He is partial android, partial female, and he enjoys John Denver music and touching.
He has a really, really big weenus.
For those of you not familiar with the weenus, it is the loosened extra part of skin found on the outside of your elbow. Look it up. Wikipedia. I want to make a film about a time-traveling weenus. And that's the element. He's born with a weenus that when you press it, the number of times you press it is the number of years it goes forward or back.
Just the weenus or the whole body?
I was thinking the whole body.
Weenus.
But just so this is the time-traveling weenus. The adventures of the time-traveling weenus. Oh, boy. He's going to come back and listen to all of this.
Yep.
Desmond, we hold you in the highest regard. What a great man you are. You've done things that have made time travel possible. You make the world a better place around us, and you should be nominated. Hey!
Well, and we're back. Hey, we're back.
Hey! Brought to you by urine.